Welcome back to Small Caps. My name's Kerry Stevenson, and today I'm delighted to be talking with Dr. Chris Gilchrist. He is the Managing Director of Davenport Resources, coming at us all the way from Ireland over there. And the ASX code, you know I love to give you an ASX code. It's DAV, Davenport Resources. Chris, welcome to the program. Great to see you. Got to love technology.
Thanks, Kerry, and good to meet you, and good to speak to your viewers.
Yeah, and our viewers do know a little bit about potash, Chris. But what I would love to do is, what is your view on the current market conditions for potash? Let's just because you've got one of the things that I do know about you is you and your board have got a lot of experience in the potash market. So what's it like out there? Is there a lot of demand for potash? I know that there's a couple of challenges, and I guess that very simply it's food supply and land availability. You know, what is it about potash that is important right now?
Okay, potash is a soluble source of potassium. So normally it's potassium chloride, but there's also potassium sulfate and potassium nitrate. However, the biggest product used in agriculture is potassium chloride. The world market at the moment is about 65 million tonnes. It reached 68 million tonnes 2 years ago, but due to bad weather for the last couple of years in North America and Brazil, it's been confined to about 65 million tonnes. Probably some restocking as well in China has begun, and Canadian companies at the moment are looking to China to start negotiations. Potash is not a traded commodity, it's sold by annual contract. So we watch with bated breath to see the conclusion of the contracts between the Russian producers and the Canadian producers with the Chinese and the Indians, and that sort of sets the price for the year. Potash is a good place to be because the global market is rising about 2% per annum. There are small ups and downs, but overall it's rising by about that. The United Nations believes that by 2050 there will be 3 billion more people on the planet. So at the moment we've got about 6 billion, and by 2050 we're going to have 9 billion. That means that the amount of arable land per person will have reduced from the 1950s at about over 4,000 square meters per person to about 15 to 1,800 square meters per person. So there will be 3 times less arable land available to feed each individual. And the only way to really boost crop production is to apply more fertilizer. And fertilizer, of course, contains potash. There's no substitute for it. So as I say, it's a good commodity to be in. It's going to grow. It has to grow. Interestingly, not only is the market led by population, but it's also, there's changing dietary demands in emerging nations and third world countries. There's a famous graph of Chinese pork consumption. Okay, this is probably prior to the Chinese swine flu epidemic, but this graph is almost exponential. The amount of meat that people are now eating is growing as they become a little wealthier. They eat more meat, and meat requires ultimately more fertilizer, more potash. So there's all sorts of...
Sorry to interrupt you, but is potash? Like, is there different, are there different levels of potash? So in other words, is there a better potash? And has technology increased the way you can extract potash?
Technology hasn't changed very much in terms of the mining and the extraction of potash. It's always been relatively simple, to be quite honest with you. It's a salt, and it's usually associated with sodium chloride, rock salt, and the trick is to separate the two one way or the other by heating up and cooling down, or by flotation processes. But they haven't changed much in the last several years, and I can't see that they're going to change very much. There are 2 main forms of potash. Potassium sulfate has a market of about 6 million tonnes. There's quite a number of companies in Australia looking at potassium sulfate from brine lakes. Its nickname is SOP, sulfate of potash. It historically had a premium of about $100 per tonne over potassium chloride potash. However, the last several years, it's had a premium of more than $200, maybe $250 per tonne, and that seems to be set to continue. People will pay the extra money to use potassium sulfate in areas that are dry, because unlike potassium chloride, the sulfate does not accumulate in the soil and poison the soil. Wow. Whereas if you're using potassium chloride, unless you've got an area of high rainfall, which we have in Ireland, of course, then you don't wash away the chlorides. So it's quite, I don't want to give you an agricultural lesson, but...
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah. But it's interesting, but Chris, it is interesting because what I said before, food supply, guys, we all need to eat. We all know that we need to eat. But here's a question I've got for you, Chris. Let's talk about Davenport Resources, because you're the managing director. You've got a lot of experience in potash. So my curiosity is, here's an ASX listed company with directors here in Australia. You're in Ireland. You've got a project in Germany. In fact, you've got 4 projects in Germany. Why Germany?
It's quite simple. The German 2 exploration permits were required by the founders of Davenport Resources in 2016. It was vended out of a shell that was purchased. And one of the originators of Davenport Resources was made known of an opportunity in central Germany by an acquaintance who told him that there were 2 exploration licenses which could be taken up. I joined Davenport later as a non-executive director initially. I was busy working on another project at that time, another potash project. And whilst we started looking at the exploration project areas, we came to understand that the German government may have some mining licenses for sale. These areas where the mining licenses were granted are adjacent to former potash mines during the GDR, the East German Communist era. And they were going to be mined by the state mining company. They were drilled extensively and explored extensively, but 1991 came along and the reunification of the 2 Germanys took place. The mines were closed down because they were old, they were overstaffed, and they were inefficient. They were put up for sale, but there were no takers because they required huge capital inputs and no one was prepared to do that. So the mines were closed, 40,000 people were released, and the areas that were to be mined were never mined. So it's important to know that we have not required licenses to mine old mines. We've got the virgin ground adjacent to the old mines, all of which have the presence of good grade potash up to 25 meters in places in thickness. And we acquired those licenses from the government, together with the results of 300 drill holes, each of which would cost about $1.5 million Australian dollars to drill in today's money. So for a very small sum, we picked up a massive asset. And ultimately, the value of those assets will find their way into the value of Davenport Resources.
Well, let's talk about those projects. I believe there's 4 projects there. From an investor point of view, because I'm curious as to what is it that excites you from an investor point of view, and how long will it take? At what stage are you at right now? Because we understand the potash market. I understand that you've got a lot of experience, as does most of your board, and that's very important. But what is it about these projects that investors should be getting excited about right now?
The unique thing about these assets is that they are located in central Germany. And there are 2 good things about that. First of all, we're in a very safe, reliable, robust jurisdiction. It's not a prospect in some unknown African country, or it's in central Germany. And if you get permits and permissions in Germany, you can bank them. Secondly, we are close to a market which, as we said earlier, the market is growing, albeit slowly in Germany and in France. But nevertheless, the gap between production and requirement in Europe is widening as mines in Europe are closing down because they're worked out. So Germany is certainly a good address. We believe that the entire suite of projects are what's known as tier one, because they tick all the boxes in terms of size, in terms of quality, in terms of the margins that we understand we can earn by mining these areas and selling the potash. Even at the very lowest point in the commodity cycle, our analysis have shown that we would still have positive cash flow, which is very pleasing. We would be able to deliver potash to customers in France, in Germany, in the UK, in Ireland, in Norway, we believe cheaper than any competitor, bearing in mind the competition may come from Russia, who are quite far away, and from Canada, who are even further away. Not only do we have potash in the ground, but we've recently discovered a massive resource containing magnesium sulfate. Magnesium sulfate itself is quite a small market. However, it can be converted to SOP, to potassium sulfate, which is the premium potash product. And also there's quite a lot of fertilizers now around the world that have added magnesium sulfate because there are magnesium deficiencies in many soils. So we can produce a diverse basket of different products, many of them value added, in the heart of Germany, in the heart of Europe, a safe jurisdiction, huge high quality resources. It's extremely attractive, and we're sincerely very excited about.
I can sense that, Chris. Are there any other companies doing what you're doing in Germany or France in those markets at the moment?
Yes, there are. There's a company called Callian Salts, who have been mining potash in Germany for a long, long time. They were the only underground source of potash in the world up until the 1950s. Callian Salts have recently invested in a large potash mine in Canada. And I think they're looking outside of Germany for whatever reason. They've got legacy environmental issues. They recently sold a large salt company in the USA. They've unfortunately, they have a high debt burden, and I'm sure some of the proceeds from that salt company sale will go to bring down their debt burden and to manage some of their historical environmental liabilities.
Which is interesting. But so what you're saying is you're the new kid on the block. What's your time frame to what's next steps for Davenport Resources?
Okay, unfortunately, I think many of our investors have believed that we've been sitting on our hands for some time, and the reason for that is we've been converting the resources in our license areas to an Australian recognised JORC inferred resource. We cannot upgrade them to indicated resources and announce the results of our scoping studies because of ASX rules. It might be different if we had been on AIM in London, but ASX are very strict about this, and with an inferred resource, you cannot discuss production capacities and mine lives and economics. Nevertheless, we've conducted these studies and we're delighted with the results, and we'd like to share them with the investment community, and I know they would be very well received. However, in order to do that, we would have to bring our resource up to the indicated standard. Our competent geologists have indicated that we would need to drill 2 holes in each area in order to verify the historic drill holes. In other words, drill a twin hole next close to an old hole and be sure that the results are within agreeable limits. and then we can use all of the results to bring our resource up to indicated. So our plan is to do that early next year, subject to financing, of course, and we're looking at the budgets and various financing options to do this. We would have those holes drilled and announce the results by the middle of next year. And after that, we would seek to accelerate the process even further by conducting a feasibility study. So certainly by about 20 months from financing, we would expect to have completed a feasibility study and possibly brought on board some, we would have had some interest, we hope, from potential partners, strategic partners, off-takers, etc. So that's the program, and we expect a very significant news flow arising from this program.
My final question to you, Chris, is, you are in the middle of, I guess it's East Germany, is it, where you are?
Yes.
Okay. Are there some challenges, because you are in East Germany, have you got challenges with the ground that you've got? Is it residential? Is it close to residential infrastructure areas? What's any challenges there?
Okay. Not really. Thuringia, we're in the state of Thuringia, which has got the lowest GDP per capita of all the German states. Mm-hmm. We've engaged with a number of politicians and other influential people in the area, and literally they're begging for employment creation in the area because there's a lot of unemployment, and a lot of the young people have actually left the area to go to other areas of Germany where the economics are more favorable. So in order to revitalize the area, they actually have earmarked, they have identified mining as one area where jobs can be created. So we do sense a very positive push from the local authorities. They have indicated to us that if we utilized derelict industrial land, of which there is a lot in the area from previous mining, that the permitting process would be greatly facilitated. And we've obviously been on site and had a look, and there's plenty of derelict area. There's very few habitations in the area, so very unlikely that people might object to what we're doing.
Any support from the government itself in terms of funding?
There could be. Politicians have indicated that there is still reunification money available for job creation projects. We have no idea as to what the rules might be or what the quantum is, but the answer to that is yes, there is money available, and of course that would be extremely helpful.
Chris, any last comments for investors? Because I saw your face get a little bit excited then when you said you've got things that you want to announce, but you've got to do these 2 drill holes. So it sounds to me like, you're a guy that's got a lot of background in the potash industry. You know what you've got, but you can't really. So I guess it's really predicated on these 2 drill holes.
Absolutely correct. You're quite right, Kerry. You're on the money there. Once we drill those holes, it's going to unlock those assets greatly, and we'll be able to share with the investment community just exactly how exciting they are. They're exciting, they're unique. To find a tier 1 asset in the heart of Europe is highly unusual. We've been granted perpetual mining licenses, which means we can keep them forever, and we don't have to commit to expenditure or any particular schedule in order to retain them. It's like a freehold. We hold those licenses, we can sell them, we can transfer them. It's something I've never seen before. I've been in many mining license negotiations in the past, but these are fantastic licenses. And the simple reason for that, Kerry, is that they were granted by the former East German state to the state mining company. So everything in East Germany was nationalized, of course, it all belonged to the state. So why would they add on royalties, or why would they not give perpetual mining licenses? There were no strings attached to them whatsoever. And
they now belong to you. They now belong to Davenport Resources.
They belong fully to us. The tenure is 100%. Before we made the payment for the licenses, we had them checked over by German resource lawyers, and we have that in black and white. The tenure is completely cast iron. So we've got no concerns in that regard. We understand the licenses properly, and they were completely unique. So that's part of our excitement, really.
Well, I'm gonna ask you one last question. That is, you mentioned the word just then, tier 1 resource. Why do you say, with all of your background in potash, that you're so excited that this is a tier 1 project that you're looking at?
Okay, it's a common term used in the mining industry, but I think it's used rather sort of loosely by people when they they describe their resources or their assets as tier 1. So we actually did a bit of research ourselves, and there's been quite a number of articles produced on what makes for a tier 1 resource. And we have a slide on our presentation, which is on our website for your viewers to look at. But essentially, because of the size and quality, because of the diverse basket of products, because we would still have positive cash flow during the lowest point in the commodity cycle, because in the center of Germany, we would have excellent ESG credentials in terms of environmental and social and governance of the project. We would have first-class impeccable credentials in that respect. And so that would constitute a tier 1 asset. There's actually 8 different criteria. I can't remember them all offhand, but
oh, don't worry, I threw that one at you at the last minute, Chris. So it's all
no, that's okay. No, it's been a pleasure. And as I say, if your viewers refer to our website, they will find the presentation and get more
there's a great presentation on your website. It's davenportresources.com.au. You've got lots of news flow. Those 2 drill holes early next year, did you say?
Correct.
Great. Let's get you back onto small caps early next year. And I'm sure there's going to be a very big smile on that face of yours. And it's been great chatting to you, Chris.
And you, Kerry, I wish you well. Thank you for the interview.